White Dragon Disciple. Mu Chen stared at the stone shadow that slowly awakened on the third stone pillar, his expression gradually becoming more serious. His body tensed up, and powerful spiritual energy rippled around him. The space behind him fluctuated, and the vast supreme sea appeared faintly. Although the White Dragon token represented the lowest level among Dragon token disciples, its difficulty was self-evident. Even someone as strong as Qin Jingzhe had only managed to obtain the status of Golden Flood Dragon Disciple. This clearly illustrated the immense challenge it posed. Within the ancient heavenly palace, there was a significant gap between the Golden Flood Dragon Disciple and the White Dragon Disciple. Once one crossed this gap, they would be able to call themselves a Dragon Token Disciple, with a status far surpassing that of a Golden Flood Dragon Disciple. The cultivation resources available to them would be worlds apart. From Mu Chen's estimation, the strength of this White Dragon Disciple likely surpassed that of most powerful beings at the peak 9th grade. In fact, even against a formidable opponent at the perfect 9th grade, it might still be able to hold its ground. This was a formidable adversary. Mu Chen's gaze was grim, and his eyes slightly lowered. His palm, hidden in his sleeve, trembled quietly. Boom! As Mu Chen's thoughts rapidly shifted, the White Dragon Disciple, upon awakening, unleashed a fierce aura. Holding a long blade in its hand, a sharp, cutting energy erupted, tearing the surrounding space with visible cracks from the intense blade chi. Its cold, hollow eyes locked onto Mu Chen, and without hesitation, its body shot upwards like a giant rock, swinging its black long blade down with great force. Swish! The black blade chi surged like a dark torrent across the sky. As it passed, the space split in two, leaving a long scar even on the indestructible plaza beneath them. The black blade light rapidly expanded in Mu Chen's pupils that he didn't dare delay. His foot stomped heavily, and the great sun indestructible body beneath him erupted with brilliant golden light. 8 golden suns slowly rose, forming a golden celestial wheel to shield him. Boom! The black blade light struck heavily against the golden celestial wheel, causing it to reverse, and powerful light erupted outward. The black blade light stalled for a few moments before being redirected and shot back toward the White Dragon Disciple. However, in response to the backlash, the White Dragon Disciple casually swung its blade, shattering the returning blade. It then gripped the hilt of its sword tightly with both hands, raising it high above its head before slowly bringing it down in a heavy motion. Though the strike was slow, the blade fell with such force that the surrounding space was forcibly torn apart like the sea. Boom! A massive black blade of energy, several thousand feet long, rushed toward Mu Chen, resembling a ferocious black dragon. It exuded an unstoppable, violent, and sharp aura, threatening to shred anything in its path. The black dragon-like blade of energy descended again, crashing down onto the golden celestial wheel. However, this time, the golden wheel was unable to reverse the attack. Instead, its golden light rapidly faded, and the celestial wheel finally shattered under the impact of the blade. Golden fragments flew through the air, and Mu Chen, looking at the shattered pieces, couldn't help but shrink his pupils. This was the first time he had seen the 8th solar celestial wheel break, and clearly, it had been destroyed in the most brutal manner. The power contained in that strike had exceeded the reversal limit of the golden wheel, leading to its eventual destruction. Although the 8th solar celestial wheel was perfect in both offense and defense, it was clear that it also had its limits. The White Dragon Disciple floated in midair, its hollow eyes still fixed on Mu Chen, who stood atop the great sun indestructible body. The black long blade in its hand was raised again, and black light gathered at the blade's tip as it prepared to strike once more. Swish, swish. If the previous strike was as slow as carrying a mountain, this one came like a thunderbolt from the heavens. The blade light howled as countless black blade shadows poured down like a torrential rain, covering a vast area around Mu Chen, leaving him no place to escape. As the black blade shadows descended, Mu Chen took a deep breath, and with a light tap of his toes, he shot backward at the same time. He flicked his sleeve, releasing a storm of spiritual seals that spread outward like raindrops, merging into the void. Facing such a powerful opponent, Mu Chen, with his half-step 9th grade spiritual cultivation, knew that responding with just spiritual energy would be incredibly difficult. Therefore, he decided to abandon the direct confrontation and instead chose to employ a spiritual array. Buzz. The spiritual seals merged into the void, connecting with each other. In an instant, massive spiritual arrays began to form around Mu Chen's body, at least a dozen defensive ones. The power of these defenses was such that even a peak 9th grade powerhouse, using their full strength, would only be able to slightly slow them down. Bang! Bang! Like a torrential rain, the blade shadows howled, as they collided with the layers of spiritual arrays, causing them to collapse one by one. The fierce and unmatched blade light swiftly penetrated, searching for its target. The spiritual arrays collapsed quickly, and after a few dozen breaths, the final layer of defense was shattered, revealing Mu Chen's figure hidden within. Mu Chen looked up, gazing at the figure in midair, and couldn't help but sigh. A white dragon disciple, as expected, lives up to their reputation. His powerful spiritual arrays. If Chen Jingzhe were here, he would likely have to use some tricks to break them. Yet, before this white dragon disciple, so many layers of arrays were forcibly destroyed in such a short time. Even a low-grade heavenly tier array can't stop you. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed slightly, and with a sudden flick of his sleeve, spiritual light surged out, and thousands of spiritual seals poured out like a tide. Since that's the case, then I'd like you to help me test the power of this high-grade heavenly tier spiritual array. Mu Chen smiled faintly. The countless spiritual seals quickly merged into the void, and with a shift of his seal technique, brilliant light erupted. Beams of light intertwined with each other, and soon, a massive spiritual array, about 10,000 feet wide, appeared around Mu Chen, covering the entire area and enveloping the white dragon disciple in midair. Mu Chen gazed at the vast array, which resembled a star river, and then looked toward the white dragon disciple. Although he knew that the disciple lacked spiritual intelligence, he still smiled and said, "This array is called the Cosmic Star River Formation, a high-grade heavenly tier. I hope for your guidance." This Cosmic Star River Formation had been sourced by Mandala for Mu Chen, and it was the highest-level array he currently controlled. Based on estimates, this high-grade heavenly tier formation had the power to kill a peak 9th grade powerhouse, and even a perfect 9th grade expert would be at risk if they were careless. Though the white dragon disciple lacked spiritual awareness, it seemed to sense the power of the array. Its body slowly tensed, and it gripped its black longsword tighter. A black blade light suddenly erupted from the longsword, the dark light fluctuating wildly, yet containing a destructive power that shattered the space around it. The great array began to operate at that moment, darkening the sky. The sky within the formation turned into a starry river, countless stars hanging high. Their starlight descended, making the array invulnerable. High in the sky, a star swayed, and suddenly the starlight gathered. The star fell, transforming into a massive pillar of starry light that crashed down onto the white dragon disciple with a thunderous roar. It was as if a real star had fallen. The force of its descent would utterly destroy any peak 9th grade powerhouse. The white dragon disciple looked up, its black longsword slowly rising. The tip of the sword glowed with black dots, rapidly gathering, resembling a black hole from a distance. Boom! The star appeared directly above the white dragon disciple. Swish! The disciple's black sword slashed down, and the black hole at the tip of the blade suddenly expanded, as if opening a bottomless maw that devoured the void. SSS. The two forces collided, but there was no earth-shattering sound. The black blade light, carrying the black hole, swept through and cleaved the star in half. However, when the star shattered, the black blade light clearly dimmed. The star shattered, but Mu Chen's expression remained unchanged. He simply gave a light praise, saying, "Truly worthy of a white dragon disciple." The force of the star's fall would have been lethal for any ordinary peak 9th grade expert. Yet this white dragon disciple had cut it down with a single strike. Hum. Just as Mu Chen's words of admiration fell, several stars in the sky trembled, and then suddenly fell, charging straight for the white dragon disciple. This time, 4 stars were falling. This cosmic star river formation could actually cause stars to fall, wielding such unmatched power to destroy those trapped within. Such force was truly terrifying. Boom, boom, 4 stars fell from the sky, and the white dragon disciple's blade gleamed once more. His expression was indifferent as the black hole at the tip of his blade grew deeper, shaking the void. He then swung his sword, striking down on the falling stars one by one. Swish, swish, swish. The blade's light howled as it shattered each star. Chen watched the scene calmly, for he could sense that when the white dragon disciple shattered the 3rd star, the black hole at the blade's tip started to flicker and waver. An unworthy victory. I apologize, Chen murmured, then flicked his fingers. The 4th star suddenly appeared behind the white dragon disciple and came crashing down. The white dragon disciple swung his sword again, but this time, the black hole at the tip of his blade trembled. Finally, with the impact of the star, the black hole exploded. Boom. As the black hole shattered, the white dragon disciple's black long sword broke along with it. The force of the star's collision disintegrated his body into countless light particles, which scattered into the air. Chen watched the white dragon disciple vanish into light particles, his expression growing serious. He knew that his victory using the spirit array had been somewhat opportunistic. After all, the white dragon disciple lacked true intelligence, making it easy for him to trap him in the array. Had it been a normal person, it wouldn't have been so easy for him to succeed. The white dragon disciple is this difficult to deal with? Chen thought with a furrowed brow. This was just the white dragon disciple, and yet he had forced Chen to use the previously untested cosmic star river formation. What would happen next? How troublesome would it be? Chen slowly clenched his hand. It seemed it was time for his breakthrough. Otherwise, his trials might end here. Just as this thought crossed Chen's mind, the plaza shook once more. His pupils contracted as he saw the mighty figure on the 1st stone pillar gradually waking up. A golden dragon soared from the figure's sleeve. Chen pressed his lips together, his expression serious. The Dragon Ascension Gate had directly granted him the challenge rights of the golden dragon disciple. On the massive stone pillar, the stiff figure began to loosen up. Within moments, a figure clad in black appeared, holding a black spear with ancient runes glowing at the tip, causing space itself to tremble. The figure stood silently on the stone pillar, exuding an overwhelming aura of dominance that made one's heart race with fear. Chen could also feel the powerful aura of the awakening figure. His eyes twitched involuntarily. This was the golden dragon disciple, truly unmatched in strength. Judging by this aura, he had certainly reached the perfect 9th grade. Beyond that, he would be a true Earth Supreme level powerhouse. Chen's hand in his sleeve slowly clenched into a fist, his expression extremely solemn. He could feel every pore of his skin tightening, his body on high alert. The golden dragon disciple before him clearly gave Chen an overwhelming sense of threat. Perfect 9th grade. Chen sighed inwardly. Facing such a powerful opponent, even now, he felt the immense pressure. However, fortunately, he was not without the ability to fight back. It seems I have no choice but to try the 9 dragons devouring immortal array. Chen's gaze flickered. Although the 9 dragons devouring immortal array was incomplete, it was still a grandmaster-level spirit array. Once deployed, it should be able to deal with a perfect 9th grade powerhouse. However, this array was not easy to set up. Despite Chen's continuous attempts and insights over time, he had failed numerous times and not succeeded even once. But through these repeated failures, Chen had gradually worked out the flaws and deepened his understanding of the 9 dragons devouring immortal array. Based on his estimation, as long as his spiritual energy grew stronger, he would have a better chance of successfully deploying the incomplete array. And to increase his spiritual energy, there was only one way. He needed to break through and raise his level. For others, this would require finding opportunities and continuous accumulation, but for Chen, it was merely a matter of going with the flow. Back in the Divine Sea space, Chen already possessed the ability to break through to the 9th grade Supreme. However, at that time, he had deliberately suppressed it, as he wanted to solidify his foundation first, and now, it was clearly the right time for things to come to fruition. Chen's expression remained as calm as a still pond. He took a deep breath, waved his sleeve, and a vast torrent of supreme spiritual liquid surged out, surrounding him in an instant. The immense spiritual energy filled the entire vast space. White mist rose from his breath, and then, with a powerful inhale, the torrent of supreme spiritual liquid split apart that it flowed like a stream into his body through his nose. Behind him, the space shifted, and the supreme sea appeared faintly. It seemed as though the sky within it cracked open, with torrents of energy pouring down from the heavens into the sea, ultimately transforming into boundless spiritual energy. Chen was directly choosing to break through here. The golden dragon disciple, who was gradually awakening atop the stone pillar, held a black spear. His eyes remained emotionless, not sensing any combat intent from Chen, so he did not act first. After all, the Dragon Ascension Gate was merely a test used by the ancient heavenly palace to evaluate disciples' potential. Therefore, when a disciple chose to break through here, according to the rules, the gate would not interfere, but instead offer protection to Chen was aware of this, which was why he had boldly chosen to break through here. Time quickly passed in this space, and the torrent of supreme spiritual liquid surrounding Chen gradually grew smaller. As all the spiritual energy was refined and absorbed into his body, in the supreme sea behind him, the water level visibly rose, and the sea, now filled with spiritual energy, became even deeper. The waves surged with the eruption of immense spiritual power. The spiritual pressure radiating from Chen's body was growing at an astonishing rate. After about 10 minutes, the last drop of supreme spiritual liquid surrounding Chen was sucked into his body through his breath. The space became quiet once again, with only Chen standing still, unmoving, like an unshakable rock. The supreme sea behind him also faded away. At this moment, Chen was as calm as a deep pool, without a single ripple. However, peace often signals a storm. After a few dozen breaths, Chen's tightly closed eyes suddenly snapped open. Boom! A beam of spiritual light, almost solid, burst from his eyes, and the vast spiritual power surged out, shaking the void, and creating a sound like muffled thunder that echoed throughout the space. The powerful spiritual pressure emanated from Chen, spreading outwards. Chen slowly clenched his hand. He could feel the powerful spiritual energy, flowing like a torrent within his body, and a satisfied smile crept onto his lips. After suppressing the energy within him for several months, he had finally broken through and ascended to the true 9th grade supreme. Though it was only a half-step difference, it was a massive improvement for Chen, because only by truly stepping into the 9th grade supreme could some of his most powerful trump cards be unleashed, like the incomplete 9 dragons devouring immortal array. Trial taker, has your advancement been completed? A faint voice suddenly sounded in the space as Chen reveled in his newfound strength. Chen looked up in surprise and saw the golden dragon disciple, head lowered, staring at him with a neutral expression. Unlike the previous stone figures, there was a slight intelligence in the disciple's eyes. It seemed this golden dragon disciple was indeed a bit different from the rest. Chen raised an eyebrow, then smiled and nodded. In that case, let the challenge begin. If you succeed, you will become the highest-ranked golden dragon disciple of the ancient heavenly palace. If you fail, you will be demoted to a white dragon disciple. The golden dragon disciple pointed his black spear at Chen, the spear tip gleaming with black light. Even from a distance, Chen could feel a chill run across his skin. If I fail, I won't even have a chance to challenge for the Azure Dragon disciple rank. Chen muttered to himself. It seemed the Dragon Ascension Gate was no longer the sacred artifact it once was, with many loopholes in the rules. But Chen didn't pay it much mind, whether he became a golden dragon disciple or not. The white dragon disciple or Azure Dragon disciple seemed to have little difference in rank. However, based on his estimation, obtaining the method to evolve the Great Sun indestructible body would likely require the authority of a golden dragon disciple. So he had to do everything he could to seize this identity. With this thought in mind, Chen no longer hesitated. He took a deep breath, his hands moving swiftly to form seals. As the spiritual light surged, countless spirit seals condensed and flew out, flooding the void around him. Chen's expression was grave as he continued to refine the spirit seals, the number of which far exceeded those in the previous heavenly high-grade cosmic star river formation. The golden dragon disciple stood atop the stone pillar, not making a move. According to the rules, it had to endure the strongest attack from the challenger before it could grant a final assessment. This pause gave Mu Chen ample time that as more and more spirit seals flew from Mu Chen's hands. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of feet began to ripple. Spiritual energy beams spread and intertwined, sketching out an immensely large outline of the spirit array. The outline of the spirit array gradually took shape. Beads of cold sweat appeared on Mu Chen's forehead. At this moment, he realized just how much energy was needed to deploy an array of this level. Had it not been for his prior successful breakthrough, no matter how deep his understanding of the 9 dragons devouring immortal array was, he probably would not have succeeded. The enormous spirit array continued to be sketched in this world, its complexity and profundity enough to make any uninitiated observer's spiritual energy stir restlessly. Even the previously indifferent expression of the golden dragon disciple became particularly serious at this moment. Its domineering aura seemed to be suppressed, slowly contracting. Cold sweat streamed down Mu Chen's forehead as he fixated on the mighty spirit array taking shape. He meticulously controlled every link of the spiritual energy filaments, daring not to make a single mistake. Otherwise, should he fail, there would be no opportunity for a second attempt in the near future, and he would inevitably fail the challenge. Fortunately, Mu Chen had undergone countless attempts and deductions prior to this, so the massive spirit array in the sky gradually came together, exuding a powerful and inexplicable pressure. Watching the formed spirit array, Mu Chen did not loosen his focus. Instead, he waved his sleeve, sending several beams of white light shooting directly into the array. Through the white light, it was apparent that they were several skeletal remains imbued with dragon blood. The dragon bones emanated a sense of dragon might. These dragon bones served as the heart of the 9 dragons devouring immortal array. Buzz. As these dragon bones entered the great array, the 9 dragons devouring immortal array immediately trembled. Profound spiritual light rippled, wildly converging toward those dragon bones. Roar. Spiritual light erupted in all directions, and then Mu Chen saw a massive dragon, exuding a terrifying power, rapidly taking form within the array. Seeing the giant dragon materialize, Mu Chen let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Joy shining in his eyes, he had finally successfully deployed the 9 dragons devouring immortal array. Roar. In the ancient plaza, an enormous spirit array enveloped the area, as if covering heaven and earth. At the center of the array, a giant dragon gradually took shape, coiling within, generating a spiritual energy storm that shook the space around it. The dragon displayed a dark yellow color, its eyes lacking intelligence yet radiating a powerful and violent spiritual energy glow. From the spiritual energy fluctuations emanating from it, Mu Chen could sense its immense strength. That was the true embodiment of perfect 9th grade. Feeling this power, Mu Chen also sighed in relief. This 9 dragons devouring immortal array truly lived up to its reputation as a grandmaster-level spirit array. Even in its incomplete state, once successfully deployed, it retained a remarkably formidable capacity for power. Mu Chen estimated that if this incomplete 9 dragons devouring immortal array could be perfectly activated, it should be able to summon 3 to 4 giant dragons at the perfect 9th grade level. However, it was clear that he could not achieve that step at the moment. Still, being able to summon 1 dragon was already very satisfying to him. If it were the complete form of the 9 dragons devouring immortal array, it would summon 9 peak 9th grade dragons. When combined with the power of the spirit array, even an Upper Earth Supreme would likely be troubled. A smile appeared at the corner of Mu Chen's mouth as he spoke, clearly impressed by the extraordinary nature of the 9 dragons devouring immortal array. After summoning the massive dragon, Mu Chen felt reassured. He looked up at the golden dragon disciple, who held a black spear, and said, "Please, guide me." The golden dragon disciple in the black robe, standing on the stone pillar, became serious. Clearly, he sensed the immense strength of the spirit array in front of him. "As you wish." With that, the disciple raised his black spear, pointing it directly at the dragon in the spirit array. In the next instant, his figure turned into a streak of black light. charging into the array with explosive speed. The spear emitted a fierce light as it pierced toward the dragon. Roar! The dragon let out a deafening roar and, at Mu Chen's command, charged fearlessly forward. A violent torrent of spiritual energy surged toward the golden dragon disciple. Boom! The clash of the two figures, one large and one small, created an earth-shattering sound. The violent spiritual energy waves caused the space around them to twist and distort under the pressure. Mu Chen's face grew serious as he watched the battle unfold within the array. He realized he had slightly underestimated the golden dragon disciple's combat ability. Even with the 9 dragons devouring immortal array summoning a peak 9th grade dragon, the golden dragon disciple still held the upper hand in the confrontation. And as for the dragon, if not for Mu Chen's constant supply of spiritual energy through the array, it would likely have been pierced by the golden dragon disciple's spear in no time. Indeed, a true golden dragon disciple, Mu Chen sighed, then stomped his foot. From his sleeve, numerous spiritual seals shot out, quickly forming a cosmic star array in the sky. Buzz! The stars shimmered, and one by one, they fell, continuously smashing toward the golden dragon disciple. Boom! As the stars rained down. The golden dragon disciple had no choice but to slow his attack on the dragon. He countered by sweeping his spear, destroying the falling stars with powerful bursts of energy. With Mu Chen's interference, the golden dragon disciple was forced into a stalemate between the dragon and the array that Mu Chen had laid out. The battle slowly began to reach a standstill. Mu Chen, watching the situation, narrowed his eyes. He then sat down cross-legged, sweeping his sleeve to reveal a torrent of supreme spiritual liquid surrounding him. Judging by the volume, it seemed to contain no less than 1,000,000 units of supreme spiritual liquid. This is troublesome. I'll have to be a little more ruthless, Mu Chen murmured with a smile as he watched the golden dragon disciple, still caught in the heat of battle. He changed his hand seals, causing a storm of spiritual seals to burst forth. As Mu Chen expended a large amount of spiritual energy to refine the seals, the supreme spiritual liquid continued to pour into his body, replenishing his energy. The spiritual seals continued to gather in vast numbers, and in the process, a massive spirit array began to form again. This time, it was another 9 dragons devouring immortal array. However, creating the second 9 dragons devouring immortal array was clearly much more time and energy consuming. Mu Chen had to rely on some external forces for success, meaning it took twice as long as before. By the time the second 9 dragons devouring immortal array was complete, the dragon from the first array had already shrunk by half, clearly suffering serious damage during its clash with the golden dragon disciple. Mu Chen's eyes flickered, and the massive dragon suddenly let out another roar. Without hesitation, it charged out once more, and when it collided with the golden dragon disciple, it exploded in a deafening blast. Boom! The brutal shockwave of spiritual energy swept through the area, shattering even the first 9 dragons devouring immortal array. The golden dragon disciple was severely wounded by the explosion, and his powerful spiritual energy was greatly diminished. However, before the golden dragon disciple could recover, another roar rang out. From the second 9 dragons devouring immortal array, a new dragon formed, charging toward him once again. Seeing the new dragon rushing toward him, the golden dragon disciple's expression changed, clearly taken aback. He had not expected to face such a ruthless challenger. It was clear that they intended to wear it down with a war of attrition. Faced with this tactic, even though it was incredibly powerful, it would ultimately be exhausted. In contrast, Mu Chen only needed to spend supreme spiritual liquid, and he could continuously lay down spirit arrays. In the current battle environment, there was no one who could interfere with Mu Chen. Thus, what was initially expected to be the most difficult challenge had become rather absurd. As the challenger, Mu Chen showed no signs of personally stepping into battle. Instead, he remained in the distance, steadily preparing his spirit arrays. He couldn't control 2 9 dragons devouring immortal arrays at once, so he had to wait for one to explode before controlling the second one. Although this method was rather underhanded, it was clearly within the rules. So Mu Chen faced no resistance. As time passed, the spiritual energy surrounding the golden dragon disciple continued to weaken. When the fourth giant dragon exploded, the golden dragon disciple's body was covered in cracks, with faint light bursting from the fissures. Sweating profusely, Chen couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. His hands trembled constantly, showing that the repeated setup of such high-level spirit arrays was a huge strain on him at this moment. His vision was even starting to blur with golden spots. After all, setting up such complex spirit arrays was more than just a drain on spiritual energy. It could even lead to complete exhaustion and cause him to faint. My apologies. Chen waved his sleeve and dispelled the half-prepared 9 dragons devouring immortal array. The golden dragon disciple in this state was clearly at the end of his strength and no longer posed a threat. At this point, Chen's challenge was finally a success. It was then that Chen realized that Su Qingyin likely had the qualifications to become a golden dragon disciple as well. However, the price would have involved significant losses among her powerful spirit insects. Clearly, Su Qingyin wasn't willing to pay that cost. In the sky, the golden dragon disciple cupped his hands to Chen and said, "Congratulations, you are now a golden dragon disciple of the ancient heavenly palace." As his words faded, light erupted from his body, scattering into countless glowing particles. These particles then gathered before Chen, forming an ancient token. On the token was a golden giant dragon coiled around it, exuding a powerful aura. The golden dragon token. Chen let out a heavy breath as he looked at the token. His body collapsed, feeling utterly drained. His muscles twitched all over as the repeated formation of such high-level spirit arrays had clearly taken its toll. Moreover, he had spent nearly 3 million supreme spiritual liquid for this. However, the fact that he had earned the identity of a golden dragon disciple made it all worthwhile. As Chen collapsed, the space around him rippled, and a beam of light wrapped around him, quickly pulling him through a spatial tear and out of the trial. Chen knew that he had finally completed the Dragon Ascension Gate trial. Outside the Dragon Ascension Gate, the world was still filled with chatter. However, many strong individuals were now casting curious glances toward the gate. They had noticed that Chen had been inside for an unusually long time, longer than anyone else before him. This made them suspicious. What had happened to Chen to delay him so much? However, none of their speculations had considered the possibility that Chen had been challenging the golden dragon disciple. Only Su Qingyin, with her brows furrowed slightly, felt a sense of unease in her heart. Buzz, just as various factions speculated, the long quiet Dragon Ascension Gate finally stirred. A brilliant burst of light shot out, forming a slender human figure in midair. That figure was unmistakably Chen. However, as the crowd's gaze fell on him, their pupils suddenly contracted in shock that a massive golden pillar of light shot up from Chen's body, piercing the heavens as if it could span the entire world. Around the golden pillar, a golden giant dragon coiled. The noise of the world suddenly fell silent. The expressions of countless powerful figures froze, and after a long pause, a deep sense of horror and disbelief surged in their eyes. That's the golden dragon disciple? How is that possible? This is a desolate floating stone island, shrouded in an ancient aura. Ruins are scattered across the island, revealing the earth-shattering battle that once took place here. Tap. The faint sound of footsteps echoed as a figure walked from one side of the island. As this figure appeared, the temperature in the surrounding air suddenly surged to an intense heat. The sky turned a dark red, and where the figure's footsteps landed, even the rocks were melted into lava. The destructive force was enough to make anyone tremble with fear. The person had fiery red hair, resembling a blazing flame. From a distance, he stood atop a lone peak, surveying the surroundings. Suddenly, he let out a soft exclamation and turned to look toward the far-off distance. Beyond the great formation of the ancient heavenly palace, he saw a golden beam of light shooting toward the sky. He was no stranger to such a light beam, as he himself had once possessed such a light beam. Another golden dragon disciple has appeared? Could it be Su Qingyin? Has she truly decided to use the spirit insects in a battle? He chuckled in surprise, then stopped paying further attention. With a stomp of his foot, a pillar of lava shot up from the peak beneath him, and his figure disappeared into the magma at the same time. In another direction within the ancient heavenly palace, atop a shattered stone tower, Two figures stood facing each other. Waves of astonishing spiritual energy emanated from their bodies, shaking the very space around them. It seemed to be a man and a woman. The man wore a black robe and had a tall, slender figure. His face was handsome, as if chiseled from stone, and his deep, captivating gaze enchanted anyone who looked into his eyes. That he wore a gentle smile that could mesmerize many women across the world. At this moment, he gazed tenderly at the figure in the distance, his eyes filled with kindness. The woman before him wore a colorful skirt, and her long hair flowed in waves, exuding a hint of allure. She had a slim, soft waist and a perfectly sculpted figure. Her long, smooth legs were enough to make anyone's mouth dry. However, her face was concealed by a thin veil, hiding her beauty that could make even the most stunning cities pale in comparison. Even so, the faint outline of her features was enough to stir one's heart. She possessed an enchanting yet cold aura. But what truly mattered to the man was not just her beauty, but the fact that this woman, like him, had also earned the title of Golden Dragon Disciple. This young lady, I am Calora from the Sacred Demon Palace. May I ask where you come from? I have never heard of such a beautiful and powerful being on the Tianluo continent, the man in black said with a warm smile. Earlier, he had obtained the title of Golden Dragon Disciple, but not long after, that record was broken. The one who broke it was this mysterious and beautiful woman standing before him. This clearly intrigued Calora, which is why he had followed her here, trying to uncover her identity and see if he could recruit this mysterious woman. However, in response to his warm gesture, the woman in the colorful skirt only glanced at him with cold eyes, then said indifferently, "If you follow me any longer, it will be considered an act of war." Hearing her disinterest, Calora's expression remained unchanged. He was about to say something when his expression suddenly shifted. He looked up and toward the distant rear. There, he saw the golden beam of light shooting into the sky. Another golden dragon disciple has appeared? Could it be Su Qingyin? Or is it Xiaoyu? Calora looked at the golden light, a strange look flashing in his eyes. The mysterious woman also cast a glance at the golden beam, but she paid it no more attention. With a graceful step, she prepared to leave. "Miss," Calora called out again. But before he could finish his sentence, a cold gleam flashed in the mysterious woman's enchanting eyes. With a flick of her jade finger, a streak of colorful light shot out, instantly piercing through the void and heading straight for Calora's forehead. The sudden attack made Calora to narrow his eyes. Aware of her mysterious nature, he dared not be careless. He immediately stopped his body, and golden light erupted from him, enveloping his entire form. His body became as if forged from gold, indestructible. Bang! The streak of colorful light, half an inch from his forehead, was blocked by the golden light. However, the incredible spiritual energy contained within it still shook Calora's body, making him shudder slightly. His expression grew more serious. He looked up, only to see the graceful figure of the woman vanishing into the distance in an instant. Interesting. Garuda gave a faint smile, his gaze deep as he watched the elegant figure disappear. The contemplative expression appeared on his face. This mysterious woman was surely no ordinary person. Such power could not be cultivated by any regular force. That he couldn't help but wonder what her purpose in coming to the ancient heavenly palace was. Hopefully, it wouldn't conflict with his own plans, or that could become troublesome. Lord Sacred Demon did tell me that in the ancient heavenly palace, there is a high possibility of encountering someone who has also cultivated the Great Sun indestructible body. Only by eradicating them can I obtain the method for evolving the Great Sun indestructible body. Garuda stood with his hands behind his back, his black cloak swaying in the fierce wind. That a cold, emotionless killing intent flickered in his eyes. Let's hope that person who also cultivates the Great Sun indestructible body isn't too weak. If not, that would be quite boring. My Great Sun indestructible body needs your blood to forge its true form. Garuda shook his head indifferently, then took a step forward. The space trembled. His figure vanished like a ghost. The golden beam of light shot up from the ancient dragon Ascension gate, piercing the heavens, as if it had broken through the very fabric of the world. Outside the beam, a giant dragon coiled, and its thunderous roar echoed through the skies. Countless powerful individuals from all around the world stood in stunned silence, eyes wide with shock. After a long while, they slowly came back to their senses, and the air was filled with an overwhelming chorus of astonishment. Is that the Golden Dragon Light Pillar? How is this possible? Chen actually became a Golden Dragon disciple. Even Su Qingyin couldn't achieve this. How could Chen, just a half-step 9th grade, manage it? This child is truly a monstrous talent. The voices of shock reverberated, each one more amazed than the last. Powerful figures from all sides had expressions of disbelief, clearly shaken by the scene before them. No one had expected that something even Su Qingyin couldn't achieve had been done by Chen. High in the sky, figures like Qin Jingzhe, Lu Kuei, and Wang Tongxian, who were all ranked at the top of the Tianluo continent's strongest list, stood frozen, their faces rigid, their eyes filled with disbelief. On the surface, their powers far surpassed Chen, a mere half-step 9th grade, especially Qin Jingzhe, who had reached the peak 9th grade. Yet, even he had only earned the title of Golden Flood Dragon Disciple. They stood there, momentarily stunned, before their gazes shifted to Su Qingyin. The latter, too, clenched her jade hand, her delicate face revealing an unmistakable expression of shock. Having gone through the trials of the Dragon Ascension Gate herself, Su Qingyin knew just how difficult the test for the Golden Dragon Disciple was. Even she had to pay a price, but in the end, unwilling to make that sacrifice, she chose to settle for the Azure Dragon Disciple title. But she hadn't expected that Chen, this half-step 9th grade, would surpass her and achieve the true Golden Dragon Disciple title. This meant that Chen must be hiding a powerful trump card capable of challenging even true 9th grade perfect cultivators. This guy, Su Qingyin clenched her silver teeth. She had misjudged him. She had originally thought that the most threatening person in Chen's group would be that girl, but she hadn't expected that Chen himself was this formidable. Looks like he really did get the Golden Dragon Disciple title. As the entire world was shaken, Lin Jing smiled. Her delicate face lit up with amusement. There was no surprise in her expression. After all, this guy had once received high praise from her mother, so Lin Jing never doubted that a mere Golden Dragon Disciple would be enough to stop him. 9 Nether also nodded with a smile, equally unfazed by the news. Behind them, the strong figures from the Northern Realm Alliance looked pale, their eyes wide as if they'd seen a ghost. Although they knew Chen had many hidden cards, they never imagined he would actually earn the Golden Dragon Disciple title. Xianming Supreme swallowed hard, his face stiff. If Chen really earned the Golden Dragon Disciple title through his own strength, it could only mean one thing. He had been hiding his true power. What he had shown so far was merely the tip of the iceberg. Xianming Supreme broke into a cold sweat, realizing that earlier he had considered competing for leadership authority, but now it seemed Chen wasn't even interested in that. If he was, his peak 9th grade power wouldn't stand a chance. Under the countless astonished gazes, the golden light pillar in the sky persisted for a while before gradually fading. Chen's figure finally emerged, and the golden light gathered in front of him, forming into an ancient golden token. That he glanced at the golden dragon token and gave a slight smile. Then his gaze swept across the room, and as it did, powerful figures from all sides hurriedly avoided eye contact, no longer daring to face him directly. From this scene, anyone could tell that Chen had clearly been pretending to be a weakling all along. The power he possessed was so immense that, even when facing a peak 9th grade expert, he likely wouldn't feel much fear, let alone someone at the perfect 9th grade. In this world, strength always reigns supreme. Therefore, no one dared to regard Chen as the so-called half-step 9th grade powerhouse he had once appeared to be. As for the shift in the mindset of these powerful figures, Chen paid it little attention that he did not immediately activate the Golden Dragon token to leave, but instead, he looked at Lin Jing and 9 Nether, nodding at them. The two women responded with a slight nod of their heads, and then both shot forward at the same time, turning into streaks of light as they entered the Dragon Ascension Gate.